Ryan, tell me all about your podcast.
All about it.
All about it, mate.
How long have you got?
About 20 minutes.
So yeah, it's called In the Shed with Ryan. I'm Ryan, and we're in the shed.
Which is, I mean, let's just discuss this before we do anything else, because this is a pretty wild place. I mean, I'm looking, what the people that are watching this can't see is a beautiful studio over there, completely surrounded by the most surreal paraphernalia I've ever seen. You've just swung some instrument around that made some crazy noise. You've got some sort of odd panpipe type thing there. And as obviously the people can see, there's all sorts of kind of cool retro toys and all sorts. There's a mobile phone from like 1991 there, which I'm afraid to say that I had one of those because I'm that old.
Did you actually have that?
Yeah,
That's jokes. Yeah,
but
I used to use that for photo shoots for my clothing line.
right.
And people were like, is that real or is it a prop? And I was like, well, it's a prop, but yeah, it's also real. Like, because they were like 20s, like kids.
Yeah.
Had no idea what this fucking phone was.
Yeah. What's surreal is they're the sort of things that like I just wanted to get rid of, like, because as technology evolved, that just looked like something from the dark ages. But you see them now, and they're just steeped in character, aren't they?
I love it. Yeah, everything in here is sort of a memory or an object that I built into it.
Yeah.
You know, I started the podcast like everyone else in lockdown.
Yeah.
I started it as a kind of solo, a solo expedition, talking to myself and sort of working out, you know, what the world's about really, and I dread to listen to the first episode now.
Yeah, but that's one of the beautiful things of podcasting, and you know, as Pod Bible, we always encourage, as much as we love to have the big superstars of the industry, you know, in our publication, it's sort of a 50-50 thing. We're equally about people that are recording little podcasts on their telephone, and it's the punk ethos that excites me about podcasting, the fact that anybody can do it. I think that's what's key. It's like, you know, if you look at radio or if you look at television, you know, it's quite a closed shop, and there's so many sort of avenues that are just not going to allow you in, whereas there's no control over podcasting at the moment. You know, we're seeing it's evolving as an industry, but I love the fact that anybody can just press record, whether it be on a little recorder or a telephone. It's the content that is key, and I think, you know, we've seen so many celebrities decide now that instead of doing a fitness DVD that they might have done 15 years ago, we've got to have a podcast now. And in theory, that's great because some of them are going to be great. But a lot of them, I think a lot of these celebrities that are approached by these production companies to put together a podcast, it's a bit of a gig.
It's forced.
Yeah, and I think that listeners can see through that. And I think that there's some great ones out there, but you know, I've been hit up by some PR companies to review some podcasts with like very, very sort of established, famous people, and you listen to the podcast, and it's like they're not even really feeling this. And I think you deciding to come and convert this shed into a space where you can connect with people and initially just reconnect with yourself over lockdown. It's fascinating. And so talk me through those early shows and how it evolved and how the shed evolved. And I want to also get onto YouTube and Reels and other avenues to get what you do out there. But initially, can we start at the sort of beginning where you sort of settled on the concept for it?
Yeah. So the shed's been with me for a while. I basically used to have a mini factory and make clothes out of it. But where COVID happened, I was also getting to a point where I wasn't that interested in doing that anymore. I found like I was just selling an object all the time, and I was like, this is too... I would rather be the object.
Sure.
You know, and I travelled across the UK selling at different festivals, and the main point I really enjoyed was talking and networking. So it kind of happened naturally. My first episode was on my birthday, and it was kind of an introduction that I think I was saying along the lines that I'm going to, you know, start this sort of podcast from my shed and explore the sort of fundamental principles of reality and work it out as I went along. And from there...
Start nice and light.
Yeah. I can't help it. But it started off more like just like anything, like a hobby and something I enjoyed. And I didn't really know what I was doing with it either. But I enjoy it so much more than the clothes and everything else. And anything that puts me away from a laptop and puts me into a conversation like this with yourself is I think, fundamentally what makes me happy. And I interviewed from there. One of my first interviews was with a gentleman called Chris, who his son used to skate for my clothing line. We used to sponsor him a little bit. And his dad was just this wild character that, you know, has met aliens and like just all this stuff. So episode 3, I've gone fully into the far left. You know what I mean? Like,
Tell me about this alien you met.
yeah, do you know, it wasn't like, it's like, okay, so that's what it is. But, you know, after that, it was interview my nan, who was, you know, a Reiki master, and, you know, find new areas of where we can, you know, grow and communicate and learn a lot more about her life. So I kind of went from there, like, yes, I really want to interview everyone now. But at the same time, I want to build a podcast that fundamentally is around my life, but from what I do and what I execute in my life, I can transform others and help from there.
Well, tell us a little bit about that then, your life. And
So, like with me, I mean, I've taken sort of a sober path, so stopped alcohol. You know, we were talking earlier about Muay Thai, Kung Fu, staying fit, ice baths, Wim Hof, meditation, all these sort of things I've looked at through others. You know, mushrooms. I had Darren LeBaron on the pod. The people I'm talking to are 20, 30 years into a topic, so they know everything about it, or
Sure.
they're very high up in the levels of what they want to know about it. And I think for me, the podcast is for me to learn, but also for everyone else to learn from it and learn from everyone else's reality.
yeah,
But also have shits and giggles along the way.
absolutely. So as you got, you know, you recorded your first episode with somebody that had encountered aliens. I mean, that's taking, you know, things to a new depth. And was that the path that ultimately you wanted to sort of pursue? Did you then go and sort of seek out more interesting people that have got stories that maybe, you know, stories about content that a lot of people may not be aware of or have had any experience of?
100%. I mean, I like to seek what others might not be seeking. And I think there's a lot of information out there, but people don't know where to look. Like I said to you a minute ago, do you know that there's electricity in trees?
Yeah.
No, and that's like mind-blowing to someone, because I think there's so much that we're taught that is irrelevant. And then you don't realise how much of when you've been taught that it's a deep programming that it throws you off the mark when you hear something that's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
So, you know, most people will just flat earth will say, well, that's fucking stupid, and then my question always is, how many hours you spent looking into it?
Yeah.
Most of the time it's 0 with these things. We kind of throw the word bullshit around too much rather than looking at it. And there are a lot of con artists. There are a lot of people, even in the spiritual realm or the new age realm or in any form of industry, that are making up stuff to sell a product off the back of it, you know. So I hope I have some sort of logic and truth in an interview that I can sort of understand where someone is coming from. But everyone's got to make money as well.
Well,
So
yeah.
flat earthers, breatharians, people that have seen aliens, yeah, I'm not intimidated by what some people might think is nonsense, but I think, you know, they're interesting fucking subjects.
Absolutely.
To me.
One of the things that we get approached at the magazine about is how people can market and monetize podcasts. And I've been very, you know, in the time that I met you, the way that you've marketed what you've done and what you do is very, very interesting. I mean, just to sort of cast our minds back a couple of months to the podcast show in London, as I left the building, there was a great big lorry parked outside with a 360 digital board advertising your podcast. Now, for most people, some people may consider taking an ad out in Pod Bible or spending a little bit of money on online advertising and things like that. You've really invested in this podcast, haven't you? Because I know, as somebody that has worked in advertising, that, you know, to get lorries to do things like that doesn't, you know, comes at a cost. So you've really gone in on the sort of marketing side of things and invested in it.
Yeah, I mean, from selling clothes, it was always a point of, I had shops in Camden, I had all these festivals I'm going to, you're talking thousands, you know, and you could make a lot of money from the festivals, but there were too many elements where you could lose. rain or too much heat or too many drugs, as in they don't want to move the next day.
Sure.
So how I look at it is where I failed in certain areas of that, a lot of the time would be like, I've got enough money for the product, got enough money to put it somewhere, but I haven't got enough money to market it. So with podcasting, you spend very little money on the production side. So I look at it like, well, that's great, but the internet can just be a black hole if you don't let people know about it. And I've spent the last sort of 8 months, 9 months, getting around 50 to 60 episodes. And I look at it like, well, I want everyone that's been on that show and come here to be appreciated as well. And the show's about allowing other people to grow and hear about their reality. So I think to create that artwork that we did and have it on that was just something that was necessary in my mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that you've really excelled in is I mean, we're sitting here now videoing this, and this is your equipment in your studio. And we also get approached quite a lot. And one of the questions that gets thrown at us quite regularly is, should we video our podcast? Should we open a YouTube channel? What's the sort of power in Reels and utilising them to market the podcast? From what I've seen of what you've done, you've kind of said yes to all of them things and have kind of really cast the net wide insofar as how people can consume what you do.
Yeah, I think we are a very visual a visual generation in a sense, and you've only got to look at even music videos. When I was growing up, I used to fucking love watching music videos all the time.
Yeah.
Can I swear?
Yeah.
Just checking. So like music videos, 3-4 minutes. Well, that fucking time is just too long now.
Yeah.
So everything has gone short form.
To kind of play devil's advocate a little bit of what you just said there, we do live in a ridiculously fast-paced world, and I watch my children and how rapid their thumbs are when they're on TikTok and these various apps, and to hold their attention, to watch a film is tough.
Yeah.
And as you say, like a music video now, it's that's still too long, and the way that you scroll, you've got to get them instantly to hold their attention, and that content has got to be of value to them, where they're going to sort of bear with the 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes that that you're offering them. How much sort of work have you put into sort of trying to understand the sort of algorithms of audio and visual?
I think I haven't really looked into too much of audio because I feel the growth is quite slow. But I think if you're getting listeners and they're coming from where they're coming from, so I think with music videos, to use them as an example, that 3 to 4 minutes in a sense is not just that it's long, but how many people are resonating with a music video anymore. On TikTok you have a song come out and a movement, and there was one a little while ago, it's just like, and all the people are doing is moving forward back and moving forward back, like a little dance move. That went viral everywhere because it creates community, creates people, everyone can do it. So how do you get that with podcasting and a short form video? Well, it has to be on topics that people can resonate. If I'm talking about scalar technology and a person doesn't eat, well, that's not going to resonate with everyone, is it? But if you're talking about, something with your friend Richard that resonates, or we're just having a laugh, then that's going to resonate.
This is fellow podcaster Rich Wilson.
Yeah. So, I think for me, it was like, okay, this is the long form content I have. What is the best way in this kind of generation and the platforms that we have to get people to know my podcast? And I think it is reels and shorts. But the main thing is consistency.
Do you think that with the audio, because for me, one of the things I didn't actually sort of make my point really when I said I was going to play devil's advocate, because with the audio, I find, excuse me, with podcasting, I think sometimes that can be escapism. And to have that, whether you're going for a run or whether you're in the car, to have a podcast on for half an hour or an hour, I don't think there's many forms of media that you give that time to now.
No.
And I find that's quite interesting with an audio podcast, the fact that it is still long form conversation where everything else is so bite size, and I think for what you're doing, I think you're playing it right insofar as, yes, the long form conversation's there, but I will try and tell me if this isn't correct, but you're going to try and hook their attention with these reels and these bite-sized snippets of the kind of the real sort of clickbaity parts of the conversation to pull them in. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, find the best highlights, find the best moments, and then try and you don't want to give too much because otherwise people will just watch the reels.
Yeah,
it's like everyone knows when you see a movie, you see the trailers like 2, 3. Well, I've fucking seen it now.
Yeah,
so it's about and also persistence. Like, don't worry too much about maybe just putting one reel out for an episode. Like, sometimes I put 5 or 6. Sometimes we do invite collaborations. That's the best way, really. With I did one with Darren LeBaron, and it starts off, his saying is, "You are a mushroom having a human experience," and the reel we made was all about the beginning of mushrooms and the story behind it, and ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and it just worked really well, and that creates such a ambience. He got about 1,000 shares from his audience, so then all his audience comes to me, so I think you've got to use these platforms to give highlights of that episode, and then the idea is to bring them all to the long form.
And Darren aside, let's talk a little bit about some of the guests, because what the people can't see is this photo board of Polaroids of some fantastic guests. Several I recognise that have actually been on the Pod Bible podcast previously. I'm instantly drawn to the fact that underneath each podcast, each photograph is the name of the guest. Instantly my eyes were drawn to Flat Earth Dave, which is an incredible name, Unusual Suspects, etc. But tell us about, for listeners that have yet to come and check out In the Shed with Ryan, tell us a little bit about, if you was to say, right, come and check out my podcast, would you say go? You said probably don't go back to the very beginning where it's just you sitting in the shed on your own. If you was to say, look, go and check out this episode, because this episode really, when I pressed stop on the recorder, I felt like I'd really encapsulated everything I set out to do with this podcast. Is there one or maybe 2 episodes that you'd say, look, if you're going to start checking out my podcast, start here?
I think it all depends on the listener, but if you wanted to get to know me first and foremost and what I'm about, my most listened to out of all of the pods I've done is Love is a Losing Game, and that's the one I put out myself, on the essence of love being a losing game.
Okay.
And I have listened to philosophers for many years because I'm not a great reader, and what I listen to is Alan Watts, and he has a very good way of speaking, and I listen to it with sort of chill steps. So I think from listening to that for so long, I really enjoy to do that myself. And the way I talk about these topics, such as love is a losing game or being present-minded, what was the other one? The last one I did was on fatherhood for Father's Day. I kind of talk about the subject in a way that is not specific to myself, but to everyone. And I think a lot of everyone can resonate with love. And I was a heartbroken chap at the time. I had to come in here and just let it all out. But, I feel like it kind of channels through me. I write a very few notes and then, just sit and talk. And I did one on sober, on being sober. And that was, I actually made a pact with my mum so that we don't drink anymore. And I had a lot of messages from males saying, I wish I had this 4 or 5 months ago, but I'm sober as well. So that put me on a path. Okay, I'm learning everything from these guests, but what can I give? So if people are looking for just something to resonate with, really, and someone to talk to sometimes along those terms, and what I do through my life, it's running or meditation. And you need these things in your environment so you have a good environment for yourself. Guest-wise, there's if you want to find out about Flat Earth, you can go to Flat Earth Dave. But I have some amazing episodes coming out with people that are very different. From Barefoot George, doesn't ever wear shoes, not for grounding, not for trying to get the electrodes off the ground just because he thinks it's another box that he doesn't want to be put in by the fucking government.
Yeah.
So, Jesse, he's a TikToker, 6'8", ex-basketball player, transformed his life again through lockdown and makes amazing viral videos that get around 50 million views. And
Wow.
he could really talk about, the highs and lows and everything that this sort of industry can bring. Reed Amber, that's an amazing episode all around the taboos of sex work and foot fetishes and kinks. I got no secrets after that one. So yeah, there is a lot, and I'm not very good at going, I'm a niche. I'm not really good at saying when I see the list of where to put yourself, everything's going to be different.
Yeah.
And the big question is, what is reality to you? That everyone answers.
Yeah.
So you got to come on, bro.
Oh, I'd love to, mate. I'd love to. And so to sort of move things, to look ahead, what's the plans in from here on in? Where are you going to take the podcast?
So I've only got the shed till September. We basically this was my dad's old house. Through lockdown, we sold it to the neighbour. So we sort of signed. Well, I said, I'm not fucking leaving. So we signed a 2-year contract, and I thought, right, I just got to nail this concept. Like it's been forced, but in a good way. So September the 20th, I will be leaving and moving into or starting the refurbishment of a Leyland's Roadrunner 1986 huge truck.
I mean, you've showed me a picture, and I'm on board. The minute van life gets involved in anything, that you're talking my language. But I mean, there's vans and there's what you've bought, and it is a monster, isn't it?
For sure, it's huge, and most of the original outlay of building the structure is all sort of there. I've just got to get my carpentry skills out. I built the shed, so I mean, it is a shed, but this is going to be a bit more work, I think.
And so the idea is to put the studio
into the shed, into the truck. I will always keep the brand as what it is in the shed with Ryan. It doesn't matter. The fact is, it's a metaphorical one after that.
Sure.
But the point is, I'm gonna. I think I never made the shed for the pod, and this is going to be a new home what I'm moving into, but I am going to create it in a way where it's going to really work for. And I don't know where I'll go in it. I don't know where I'll be. I don't know if I'm going to plot up and be in one place in a farm in Surrey, or if I'm going to take it on the road and pull up outside Russell Brand's house and say, "Oi, I've emailed you 15 times. Get on the fucking show, bro." If I had a bus outside, you can imagine what the decor in my mind is going to be like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just to scale it back a little bit as well. When you were sort of putting the podcast together, had you already been listening to podcasts? And if so, what was kind of inspiring you a little bit?
I listened to Joe Rogan for years.
Oh, I had a feeling you might say that.
Yeah, conspiracy.
But it's strange with Rogan, because Rogan was, aside from me listening to the Ricky Gervais podcast and Russell's podcast when it was essentially just comedy, I fell into listening to Joe Rogan because he would interview my favourite fighters. And then sort of peppered in between that, he'd get these thinkers on.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, and I find this is quite commonplace when people discover a new podcast, certainly if it's sort of guest driven, that you'll scroll through until you recognise a guest, listen to that episode, listen to another one with a guest that you recognise, and then, which was very much the case for me with Rogan, and then all of a sudden, I don't care who you're talking to because I'm into Rogan. Yeah. And sure. I think that's the real key. If you can have all the greatest guests in the world, but
if you're a shit host, you're fucked.
You've got to like the host. And I think that obviously, the story of Rogan is, he's one of the, if not the biggest success story in podcasting. And what kind of things did you learn from the way that Joe talks to people that you've kind of tried to sort of learn from and sort of not emulate, but sort of make your own?
Curiosity and not being scared to be stupid.
Yeah.
Ask the questions even if you feel like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if someone has studied a specific subject for many, many years, you're not going to know hardly any of it or some of it. So I felt that with him, very little notes. He's literally just involved and channeling and in the entire conversation. And there isn't a point where he's going to have any thought process to not say something.
Yeah.
You know, and we do it a lot. You know, you do it in relationships, you do it with friendships. You know, you hold back on something, and you know what that does. It builds up inside of you. And I feel that that's doing this is where that's allowed me to have the conversations that I wanted to. And from listening to Joe over the years, I don't listen too much anymore to many because I'm fucking trying to do most of them. But,
Sure.
But with his, yeah, it's just learning information. But I find also you can get so... You have to step into that information for a while and then step out. Like if you're constantly consuming, you need diet with it as well. And, you know, he has so many episodes coming out all the time.
Absolutely. And they're not a 20-minute episode, are they?
No, no, they go on. Some are like 5 hours.
Yeah.
You know, 5 hours of Alex Jones.
Yeah. That's an intense listen right there.
You know, you don't want headphones. He shouts too much. You know?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to shout out now that if you've never listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, go and listen to the episode with one of the owners of Pod Bible, because our very own Scroobius Pip was lucky enough to be a guest on Joe's podcast, and it's a fantastic listen. So I'm going to put a shameless plug in there for Pip's episode with Joe. So in regards to the sort of future of this, you know, you've mentioned about moving to the van. What we're seeing with a lot of podcasts now is live shows. Is that a consideration?
Yeah, I'd love to do one. Yeah. You know, at the podcast show, I did a little launch. It was good little turnout, like 70, 80 people.
Yeah.
Gave out free mushroom chocolate bars, not the psychedelic one. Well, maybe, but this is lion's mane, which is you know good for memory growth. But I did a little talk there, and I just loved it. I loved the stress, loved the energy, loved the pressure, and I think once it grows enough, which I think already it's at the point. But the other thing I want to do at the minute is events and based around sober activities. So we're looking to do once a month or twice a month different events, such as Hackney Spa, so ice bath, sauna. I've been going to London Fields forever, and I didn't know there was a Lido there. So Saturday swims, something like that, so people can, you know, subscribe and then, you know, find out when these events are going to be, and then just build a sort of monthly kind of thing for people that don't want to, you know, go and get fucked up on the weekend.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out about potential live shows, where they can watch the podcast, where they can listen to the podcast, where they can find out all about you, where's the best place to go and do that?
In the Shed with Ryan on everything. The website is it's a very good website. Not saying it just because it's myself, but we had it made and everything is on there. From you could go straight onto the website from any link which is on my Instagram or TikTok. But literally every feed, every platform is in the Shed with Ryan. So there was no other one out there.
Fantastic. Ryan, thanks loads, mate.
I just want to end it with a little 3-minute meditation to give you a little bit of a touch of what the Shed is.
I'm loving this.
So we'll go into the woods. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you specific questions.
Okay.
So just lean back, relax.
Okay.
And just I'll put the little. I think you heard it before. Here you go.
Right. Okay. I'm in the woods. I'm loving this.
So close your eyes and just relax for a second. Try not to laugh. I can see you with it. If you can laugh, you can laugh. But I'm going to ask you some really specific questions.
Okay.
And I just want you to say what you see as soon as I ask you, and they'll be really obvious, so you'll know what to say basically. So,
Okay.
So we're in the woods. The leaves are falling. And light's coming through the trees. And you look to the right, and there's a person standing next to you. Who is that person?
It's my best friend.
Okay. You're going to continue to walk in the woods. Your best friend's going to say, see you later. And you see a little rustle in the bushes, and an animal comes out. What animal is this?
It's a dog.
And what sort of interaction do you have with this dog?
I pet it straight away.
Yeah. Okay, and then you and the dog have a bit of fun, and then he's off. And you're going to walk now And as you go further into the woods, there becomes a clearing, and you see your dream house. Can you describe the size of your dream house?
Small.
Yeah. And is there any fence?
No, it's a log cabin.
Okay. Very situated in the very good spot in the woods for a log cabin. Okay, and you're going to go into the house now, into your dream house. And in the living room is a dining table. Can you describe what's on the dining table and around the dining table?
There's a bottle of red wine.
Nice.
There's a pad. There's candle.
Nice.
There's a record player. And there's a selection of my favourite records.
Very nice. Okay, and you're gonna leave your dream house now. You're gonna walk out the back, and there's a cup on the floor. Can you describe what the cup's made of?
It's a tin cup.
Tin. And what do you do with the cup?
I pick it up and I take it back into the house and I put the red wine in it.
Right, so you're going to take your tin cup of wine now and walk to the edge of your property, and there's a body of water. Can you describe what type of body of water it is?
Oh, this is the good stuff. Like, yeah, it's as I look up, I can see a fast-flowing river that starts to get more and more gentle, and it starts to kind of literally subside into like a pool, and it's a sort of still pool. So I know the water's clean because I can see where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And it's pulling me in.
And how do you cross this body of water?
I literally get down to my underwear and I swim.
Good. Amazing. Come back.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to tell you what these mean now.
Oh, fantastic.
So you did really well. There's no
okay.
right or wrong at all, but you answered amazingly. So the first one that you said was your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most important person to your life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very present-minded. It kind of homes in. The second question, what was the fucking second question?
The second question
animal.
was the animal.
So the dog is representative of the size of your problems. So, you know, a dog's man's best friend. So I've had some people say a bear and, you know, would represent big problems. So a dog, it's fairly small problems. But the interaction that you have with the dog shows how you deal with your problems. So the interaction you had is, you know, play with the dog and everything else. So that's great. But the fact is as well, some people say a bear, but they give the bear a hug. You know, so the difference is your problems can be big, but you can still deal with them. Richard said a wolf.
Right.
And I said, what do you do with the wolf? He said, I stared at it.
I don't know what. I ain't got enough time to unpack that.
So yeah, and then your dream house, as we walked into the woods, the size of it is basically representative of the size of your ego. So that's small, which is good as well. A fence indicates whether you have an opened or closed personality. So you have a very open personality. I say you would from meeting you. And inside the house is the dining table. If you had no food or drink or candles or anything on it, you could be generally unhappy at the minute. You had life living on that table, basically music, drink, a book, candle. So then as you walked out of the house, I said, what material was the cup? And you said that it was tin. Well, that represents, tin's quite strong in certain forms. That represents, but it also can be crushed quite easily. So that's the representation of your relationship between you and your best friend. So maybe sometimes you have quite a tough relationship and sometimes quite a weak relationship, that I could say.
Yeah.
So the other side to it is what you do with the cup. Well, you looked after the cup, you filled it up with wine, so you must have a drinking buddy there.
Absolutely.
So then we walked out of the house and you went to the body of water at the end. And that is representative, you said, a very fast or nice flowing river that you could walk into and cross. That's your representation of your desire for love. So that's bang on, really. It's not a lake, it's not a pond. It's just exactly how you want to sort of have love in your life, I would say. So yeah, that's something that I do with every guest on the show.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I didn't want to leave you out.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that was wonderful. Oh, superb. What a fantastic way to finish an interview by getting a sort of snapshot as to what you ask guests about. And as we've mentioned, there's been so many guests and there's so many more to come. And so as somebody that listens as well, I can recommend this podcast. And for somebody that's just done one of the key parts of that podcast, it's fantastic. What a lovely way to end it. And once again, if people want to check out what you do,
in the Shed with Ryan, and every episode we release at 5 p.m. on Sunday.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then there'll be reels every week. A solo pod, I always say, and if they go from the beginning, I apologize, because I always say I'm going to do one a week, and I do it when I feel like it, and when it comes to me, in a sense, so that people get the rawest essence of me. And you know, when it's right is when I know the experience I've had is something I can translate into words. So that is something that's spontaneous, but guests and everything else is solid every week.
Wonderful. Ryan, thank you so much, mate.
Thank you. Amazing.